So, a couple of days ago, comicbook.com decided to release a list titled Every Hokage in Naruto and Boruto ranked from worst to best. And yeah, if you want to get my attention, that's pretty much the best way to do it. And while I don't peruse comicbook.com's website, this article was sent to me. And usually when articles are sent to me, they're not good. And wouldn't you know it, that rule holds firm. Because here's the thing, I've ranked the Hokages in pretty much every single way somebody can rank the Hokages. Strength, usefulness, age, all of it. And thus, when I got told that this list was gonna aggravate me, I pretty much knew exactly what I was getting in for. Except for the fact that I didn't. Because out of 9 possible places that this list could have placed 9 possible Hokage, they didn't get one right. Not only did they not get one right, they were so massively off on basically every single entry they put down. It's borderline astounding. And thus today, I want to go through this list with you and break down why every single thing they said about all of these Hokages and their usefulness was wrong. Because today we're talking every Hokage in Naruto and Boruto ranked from worst to best, debunked. But before we get to debunking anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional Nick video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the 4th wall link in my description below. We're on to the Forest of Death. So, this article opens up with a dishonorable mention of Danzo Shimura. And while Danzo never officially becomes the Hokage, as he tries to steal the mantle unsuccessfully from Tsunade, after Tsunade falls into a coma after the pain assault arc, this article still felt it prudent to make sure that Danzo was disrespectfully mentioned. And like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. I kind of have to agree with that. I mean, technically, as a Shadow Hokage, he did a lot more for the village than literally anybody else. None of it was good, but he did do a lot. See, because as to whether or not it was orchestrating the Uchiha massacre, accidentally founding the Akatsuki while murdering Hanzo the Salamander, or leaking the fact that Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails so the entire village had something to hate in a unified way, Danzo did do a lot for the village. Just usually when he got his hands on something, he made it substantially worse. But thankfully, because of Ao, who was the Mizukage's aide, and his stolen Byakugan from the Third Great Shinobi World War, he was not only able to stop Danzo before he could use Kodomatsukane on Mifune, the impartial party invited to the 5 Kage Summit in the lead up to the 4th Great Shinobi World War, who would have been able to sway the tide of all the other Kages into voting for Danzo as the head of the Shinobi Alliance, and Sasuke, who killed Danzo when he had to escape from that 5 Kage Summit that he tried to manipulate. Danzo never got a crack at becoming the 6th Hokage. But sure, you want to throw him on the list as a dishonorable mention to get some goodie points, I guess I can't blame you there. However, unfortunately, the goodie points immediately disappear when we get to the true meat of this list. Because coming up at number 8, aka apparently the worst Hokage in the history of Konoha, we got Hiruzen Sarutobi. Tell me you watch Naruto on TikTok without telling me you watch Naruto on TikTok. But who knows, maybe this article has access to some sage wisdom that I simply don't. As their reasoning for placing the longest ever tenured Hokage at number 8, aka last place on this list, goes as follows. While Sarutobi might have ultimately worked for the betterment of Konoha, he waded far too deep into nefarious waters to do so. Responsible for the death of the Uchiha clan and acting as quite the terrible adoptive father to Naruto, the 3rd Hokage was still able to prove himself in many ways. One of the biggest moments was his final fight against Orochimaru, ending his life in the process, but ensuring that the 3rd was able to save the land he loved so much. Unfortunately, in comparison to the other ninjas on this list, picking Hiruzen for the last official spot felt like an easy choice. An easy choice. First off, Hiruzen was not responsible for the death of the Uchiha clan. Now, if you want to make the argument that Hiruzen not checking Danzo for the majority of his tenure as the 3rd Hokage was his biggest mistake, then yeah, I'll give you a little bit of rope on that. However, Hiruzen was talked about as the Will of Fire incarnate. And if you need to understand what the Will of Fire is, it's an idea shared amongst Konoha villagers that love and loyalty should be held above all other ideals indefinitely. And Danzo, so far as Hiruzen understood, was Hiruzen's best friend. Both the Sarutobis and the Shimura clans joined Konoha at its foundation. And Hiruzen fought alongside Danzo in the First Great Shinobi World War as part of Team Tobirama. They had been best friends and rivals their entire lives. I'm not gonna sit here and say that Hiruzen didn't give Danzo too much leeway. He absolutely did. However, it's important to note here that Danzo was a genius, operating in the darkness, away from the vision of Hiruzen. And while maybe Hiruzen afforded him the position to set up things like the route which ultimately Danzo was able to use for evil, Hiruzen wasn't the only governmental body controlling Konoha during this time period, as Homura and Kohaku, the 2 elders, were also ruling alongside Hiruzen. And the fact of the matter is that Hiruzen had to be the voice voice of reason against Kohaku, Homura, and Danzo simultaneously, often diametrically opposed to the governmental decisions they tried to make. The death of the Uchiha clan falls squarely on Danzo's shoulders. Hiruzen was actively seeking to have a conversation with Fugaku to try and ease the tensions between the village and the Uchiha. And while yes, Hiruzen was responsible for sending the Uchiha to live in their own village and for stopping them from helping on the night of Kurama's emergence, aka Naruto's original birthday, but like fundamentally, that was the right choice. Hiruzen was responsible for pushing Kurama out of the village, and he saw while battling against Kurama that he had Sharingan eyes. He was very clearly placed under a genjutsu by a Sharingan user. And it's not like Hiruzen was able to deduce, oh, it might have been Madara or Obito. Why would he have access to that information? So far as Hiruzen knew, A, the Uchiha were kind of upset about their station in Konoha because they had been recommended to be the police force by Tobirama, which forced them into a position that didn't necessarily allow for them to climb up the ranks and eventually become Hokage. And B, all of the Uchiha, aka all of the people who could have possibly placed Kurama under a Sharingan genjutsu, lived in Konoha. So yeah, unfortunately did Hiruzen preside over a really bad time to be an Uchiha? 100%, but the eradication of the Uchiha doesn't fall on Hiruzen's shoulders as much as it falls on Danzo's shoulders and Obito's shoulders. And if you want to go way, way back to people who could possibly have been the root of the cause of the Uchiha massacre, Madara also deserves some blame. But Hiruzen was also the Hokage who ended the first, second, and third Great Shinobi World Wars, not only securing victory for Konoha, but also ensuring that the wars were ended without too much needless bloodshed, going so far as to literally step down at the end of the third Great Shinobi World War so that Danzo wouldn't be able to pursue the engagement of the war further, because Hiruzen understood that if he stepped down as Hokage, he would be able to end the third Great Shinobi World War and take all of the blame for the third Great Shinobi World War even happening in the first place in Konoha upon himself. By this into the fact that, like I said earlier, he was responsible for pushing Kurama outside of Konoha on the night of Naruto's birth, and for coordinating the rescue of hundreds of thousands of people in Konoha on that very night, and the fact that this list is only trying to give him the fact that, oh, hey, yeah, he also basically defeated Orochimaru while almost 70 years old, while also fighting against Tobirama and Hashirama simultaneously by himself, and his complete and total erasure of everything else he accomplished in his almost 50-year tenure as Hokage. Oh, but he wasn't a good dad to Naruto. He had so many other things going on. The Uchiha massacre, the formation of the Akatsuki, the death of the strongest ninja in the village, the person who was supposed to lead the village in his absence, the Hyuga incident, other villages constantly trying to provoke Konoha into another war, and so much more. Yeah, he wasn't super present in Naruto's life, but neither was Jiraiya, Naruto's literal godfather. So are we gonna start giving him flack too, or was he too busy to keep an eye on Naruto as well? Hiruzen lost his children on the night of Naruto's birth. Konohamaru's parents, one of which was Hiruzen's child, and Hiruzen's only child, mind you, died on the night of Naruto's birth. After that, Hiruzen's adoptive child, Orochimaru, was found out to be conducting experimental human procedures that killed 70 plus children, and thus Hiruzen was tasked with the killing of Orochimaru. I can't say I blame Hiruzen for struggling to take on another child. His wife was Kushina's midwife and got murdered by Obito. And if we're saying, oh, hey, he was a bad father and therefore a bad Hokage, pretty much every Hokage ever has been a bad father, including, very much so, our apparent number 7 pick, and the actual only pick that me and this list agree on, because coming up at number 7, we have Minato Namikaze. Now, I know I said earlier that me and this list agreed on absolutely nothing, but we did agree on one thing, and that's that Minato wasn't that good of a Hokage. And that's not necessarily because Minato was a bad Hokage, it's because he didn't accomplish anything, he didn't rule that long. I mean, Minato's one and only accomplishment is battling against Kurama on the night of Naruto's birth. Something that pretty easily could have been avoided, especially when you consider the fact that all of the higher-ups in Konoha knew that the seal on Kurama was going to get weakened while Kushina was giving birth. In fact, it was such widely available information that Obito knew. So if Kurama could have been swapped into a less likely to be pregnant host prior to Kushina giving birth, that probably would have been a pretty good leadership decision. But unfortunately, that leadership decision wasn't made, and therefore Minato had to battle against not only Obito, but also Kurama in the same night. And while Minato is definitely the one who was ultimately responsible for sealing away Kurama on the night of Naruto's birth, without help from Hiruzen and Kushina, he's probably not clutching that 1v1. And while some people will make the argument that there was no reason for Minato to seal Kurama inside of Naruto, why did he just put it back in Kushina? That's Well, it's actually not that bad of a point. See, because Minato only seals half of Kurama inside of Naruto, and there was an entire other half he could have sealed back into Kushina, effectively giving Naruto the power that Minato believed he needed, while also not overflowing him with Kurama's chakra and saving Kushina's life. However, by the time that game time decision was made, both Minato and Kushina were suffering from toenail in the stomach. So yeah, did Minato do better in this situation than anybody else in the village? Probably would have, 100%. But is that pretty much the only thing he ever accomplishes as the third Hokage outside of knocking up the woman who probably shouldn't have been knocked up? Yeah, but apparently, at least according to this list, like father, like son, at least when it comes to being a bad Hokage, because at number 6 on this list, we got Naruto. Yeah. And listen, Naruto hasn't had the longest tenure as Hokage. In fact, most people speculate between Naruto's inauguration and his disappearing act by the hand of Kawaki into the Daikoku-ten, Naruto only served about 7 years as Hokage, which would make his tenure as Hokage about the 4th shortest on this list, with the only people with shorter tenures being Tobirama, Tsunade, and Minato. Yeah, Hokages don't usually serve that long, and in fact, 7 years is actually a pretty good amount of time to serve as Hokage.
But Nick, if Naruto only got to serve 7 years, then wouldn't it make sense that he'd be pretty low on this list? I mean, what could he possibly have accomplished in those 7 years?
Well, you know, more than almost every other Hokage ever. But then again, what do I know? What does this article have to say about why Naruto is so incredibly low on this list? Well, they say, and I quote, "This is perhaps our most controversial choice on this list, but there is a reason why we're ranking Naruto so low. The 7th Hokage has certainly been granted the opportunity to lay his life on the line in fighting against the Otsutsuki and the Kara organization. But when it comes to the daily grind of being Konoha's leader, he's pretty lacking. Could you imagine Naruto attempting to broker the peace between 2 warring ninja nations? Yeah, I could. He's done it. But let's continue. Could he think outside the box when it comes to military strategies? Yep, once again, he's done it. But I digress. There's someone who's effectively been the brains of the operation throughout the 7th tenure, and we'll get to them in short order. Naruto's achievements are quite legendary, to be honest. The good majority of them have nothing to do with him being Hokage. Is that true now? So their take on the matter here as to why Naruto is so incredibly low on the Hokage list is because he doesn't do the bureaucratic job of being a Hokage well, which mind you is absolutely a point that I can argue against, because he's so caught up in his 7-year tenure as Hokage being a bureaucrat that one of the biggest talking points about part 1 of Boruto is that Naruto is not around for his family. He's in fact so committed to the role of Hokage that he literally misses Himawari's birthday, sending a shadow clone in his stead so he can stay in his office and get the job of Hokage done.
But Nick, just because Naruto's in the office all the time doesn't mean he's a good Hokage.
Okay, I guess, if you don't read anything in the Boruto universe. See, ignoring for a second that Naruto played a massively important role in not only the Shin Uchiha arc, but also the Mujina Bandits arc, eliminating incredibly dangerous threats to Konoha as the Hokage, but Naruto is also overseen as the Hokage, one of the most historically positive moments of growth in Konoha's history, as he funded, created, and implemented things such as the Thunder Train and shinobi-wear gauntlets that allow for lower-level shinobi to fight at higher levels, broken the peace deal between Orochimaru and Konoha, which led to the creation of Mitsuki, one of the strongest assets that Konoha currently has. And oh yeah, not only saved Konoha, but the entire world 2 separate times, and also stopped the 5th Great Shinobi World War. Because, well, yes, in Shikamaru's second light novel, he was the person responsible for putting Naruto on the stage in front of every single governmental figure in the entirety of the Naruto continent. It was Shikamaru's blind faith in Naruto's ability to de-escalate what was an upcoming 5th Great Shinobi World War, led by the daimyo of the Land of Stone, that allowed for Shikamaru to simply orchestrate putting every single governmental figure in a room and throwing Naruto in front of them, because Shikamaru understood that Naruto's radiance would diffuse any and all tensions. And that's the thing. Yeah, Shikamaru was the head of the Shinobi Union, and yeah, Kakashi was technically the person that loitered over the majority of Konoha's flourishment into what we know it as, the booming tech metropolis in Boruto that it is right now. But that entire time, and especially during Naruto's time as Hokage, all peace was brokered on the idea that if peace wasn't accomplished, Naruto would probably come for you. A title and sentiment he had to back up twice when he not only saved the world from Momoshiki, but also Ishiki, something he and he alone could do. But for some reason, this article doesn't seem to believe that that falls under the role of the Hokage, when the only people that went off to fight against Momoshiki were the Kage, Sasuke, and Boruto, when the Hokage role has very clearly been pointed out in the early days of Naruto, be appointed to the strongest person in the village. The Hokage, or any of the Kages in any of the villages, is essentially just the commander of the nation's army, and thus the Kage standing up in crucial fights and defending their villages is a core core part of their role. So you can't just say, oh yeah, I mean, sure, Naruto saved the world twice, but that's hardly a Hokage role. I mean, did he have to do any paperwork about it? That makes no sense. And he doesn't have to broker peace between warring ninja nations because nobody would dare enter a war so long as he's breathing. It's the reason Iran and Israel aren't using nukes, because they know other people with more nukes also have them. He is power incarnate. He is the nuclear armament of the Naruto world. But you know who's apparently a better Hokage than Naruto ever was? Arc number 5 entry on this list, perplexingly, Kakashi. And to put Kakashi, whose Hokage ship we know next to nothing about, over Naruto, we must have some pretty solid reasoning. Right? Well, let's see. This article says, now to be fair, this ranking for Kakashi, aka the copycat ninja, could have been much higher if he had experienced tougher times. Taking the mantle of Hokage after Tsunade, Kakashi pretty much had an uneventful run as a leader of Konoha and as the 6th Hokage. It's pretty unfortunate that we never got the chance to truly see him in action, that much thanks to the 10-year taking place between the conclusion of Naruto Shippuden and the beginning of Boruto. As Hokage, Kakashi's run almost seemed like a stopgap, which is somewhat unfortunate. So, the stopgap Hokage, whose tenure we know next to nothing about, is better than Naruto, who saved the world thrice. Because? Is this because he wasn't a bad dad? And well, it sounds like I'm making a joke. There's only 2 Hokage on this list who never have children, and they're both higher than they should be. Listen, like I said earlier, the majority of Konoha's flourishment into the booming tech metropolis that it currently exists as happened under Kakashi, as Kakashi assumed the mantle of Hokage technically immediately after the 4th Great Shinobi World War. However, he didn't assume the responsibilities of the role until about 2 years after the 4th Great Shinobi World War because he didn't want to be Hokage, and therefore Tsunade had to keep doing all the work even though she wasn't technically Hokage still after the 4th Great Shinobi World War. Now, we know all this from Kakashi's first light novel. Well, Kakashi does accomplish a fair amount in this light novel, like inventing his purple lightning and taking down a terrorist organization. This light novel is kind of just a way to show us that Kakashi is slowly but surely accepting his role in Konoha, which was Hokage. Now, in terms of seeing Kakashi when he was Hokage, the only real piece of info we have access to is Naruto the Last. Like, Kakashi has to deal with the threat of Tsunade trying to throw the moon at the Earth, and also with the reveal that the Hidden Cloud had for some reason made a gigantic chakra cannon that was able to destroy the moon. And what does Kakashi do in this circumstance? Well, he sends Naruto to the moon. And what happens when a meteor is hurtling its way towards Konoha? Well, Sasuke destroys it, making Kakashi's only real role in Naruto the Last stopping the Hidden Cloud from blowing up the moon while Naruto's still on it, which is important. But it's not more important than saving the world thrice. But Kakashi is one of the longest tenured Hokages of all time, as he's technically Hokage for a decade plus, as he gets the mantle of Hokage when Naruto is 16, and Naruto doesn't become the Hokage until he's about 27 years old. So for technically being the Hokage while Tsunade was trying to throw the moon into the earth and guiding Konoha into an era of prosperity, Kakashi's like an okay Hokage, we just don't know that much about him. So putting him above any other Hokage we know a lot about is kind of nuts. Don't worry, it gets weirder, because coming up at number 4, we have the founder of Konoha, the 2nd longest ever tenured Hokage of the Leaf, Hashirama Senju. So, what possible reasoning could this article have to put Hashirama dead in the middle of the pack? Well, they say the man who started it all by founding Konoha, Hashirama Senju, certainly earned his place in the history of the ninja world. Dealing with strife and violence that many ninjas could only dream of, Hashirama was forced to kill his best friend Madara and work tirelessly to bring peace to the ninja world. Much like Kakashi, it's unfortunate that shonen fans weren't able to receive an entire season focused on his works, but the legacy he left behind. Senju even earned his title as God of Shinobi by displaying some wild abilities that marched on via his ancestors. So I just want to remind you guys, there's a couple of people that haven't been listed by this list yet, and those 2 people are Tsunade and Shikamaru. Yep, Tsunade and Shikamaru are better Hokages than Hashirama, the founder of Konoha, the man who beat the Uchiha clan, beat Madara into submission, shook his hand, founded Konoha, brought in the Uzumaki, the Sarutobi, the Shimura, the Hyuga, the Aburame, some of the most powerful clans in the entirety of the ninja world, said, hey, you all get along now, you live under my roof, and because he made such an absurdly powerful village, every other nation filled with nomadic tribes said, oh my god, if we don't do that same thing, we're gonna die, and thus literally founded the concept of ninja villages just so that those ninja villages could start beefing with each other, to which Hashirama did not want, so he called all of the original leaders of those villages together and said, hey guys, don't worry, I can make us all equally powerful. I just caught 9-tailed beasts. Does anybody want any? To which everybody but the Sand said yes to, showering Konoha in as much money as they would possibly ever need, which allowed for Konoha to be set up as the most prosperous nation in ninja history for the rest of time. Not to mention that it's highly likely that the majority of Konoha was built by his wood release, and that it is canon information that the forests around Konoha were grown by him to hide Konoha from its aggressors. Not to mention that it was him who made a treaty with Uzumaki and brought Minato Uzumaki, the first ever Jinchuriki of Kurama, into the village, that not only cemented the fact that there would be incredible Fu and Jutsu users in Konoha forever, but also a treaty that set the stage for Naruto's birth in the first place. Not to mention, he's also Tsunade's grandfather. And that man, yes, that man is at number 4 on our list. Lovely. But if this list did do one thing right outside of placing Minato at 7, it was putting Tobirama above Hashirama. Because coming up at number 3 on our list, we have Tobirama Senju. Yep. Tsunade and Shikamaru still haven't been mentioned, but who knows? Maybe they know something about Tobirama I don't that's knocked him down on this list. Anyways, they stated, while Hashirama got the ball rolling, the second Hokage was the one who truly refined the legacy and traditions of Konoha. The Hidden Leaf Village had been forged thanks to the shinobi god, but it was thanks to Tobirama that Konoha was able to truly stand on its own. From the Ninja Academy to the Chunin exams to Konoha's ranking system, the way that the Hidden Leaf functioned was all thanks to Tobirama, proving that the second Hokage was a brilliant mind when it came to the developing nation. And yeah, those are all things that Tobirama did. Tobirama, who was also an instrumental part of the founding of Konoha, was actually pretty much the only person who ever implemented the values that Konoha was established on, which was that children should never go to war. Thus, in order to make sure that children not only got an education, but also had somewhere to be while they were young that wasn't the battlefield, he created the Shinobi Academy. However, he decided that just graduating from the Shinobi Academy was not enough to send somebody to war, and thus he made the Chunin exams, implementing an incredibly difficult exam that only passed the strongest of ninja to become Chunin, also implementing the rule that only Chunin and above could be involved in full-on wars. And in order to make sure that this rule was abided by, he also implemented Konoha's not only ninja ranking system, but also its mission ranking system, creating roles such as Genin, Chunin, and Jonin, also creating a system that ranks missions based on their difficulty to make sure that too difficult of missions don't go to too low-ranked ninjas, ensuring that Genin aren't sent on important war missions, and ensuring that Jonin aren't sent on menial tasks. But that's not all he did. He also ensured that Hashirama got paid for the sale of the tailed beasts when he wanted to give them away, ensuring Konoha's financial future for the rest of ever, and gave the Uchiha a role that they were incredibly well suited to by giving them the Uchiha police force. Oh, Nick, he did that to keep the Uchiha down. No, he didn't. When trying to police a village filled with shinobi, the most effective way to make sure that there isn't a ton of collateral damage is the usage of genjutsu. Tobirama assigning the Uchiha to be the police force was the objectively right choice. They were more powerful than your average shinobi, and they all had access to genjutsu that would allow for them to de-escalate without destruction. Tobirama did not hate the Uchiha, he understood them very well. He hated Madara. And honestly, kind of fair. Konoha would not be what it is today without Tobirama. And no, it was not Tobirama who moved the Uchiha into their own village. Tobirama died during the first Great Shinobi World War. That was Hiruzen. And mind you, Tobirama may actually be the shortest ever tenured Hokage, as he was assigned Hokage-ship at the beginning of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War and died in that war. And yet, he accomplished as much as he did. But surely if Tobirama Senju, the undoubtedly greatest Hokage of all time, is at number 3, then number 2 and number 1 must be some more sensible picks, like, I don't know, Hashirama, or Hiruzen, or maybe even Naruto, right? Wait, no, we covered all those people already. So that only leaves, wait, hold up, let me do the math here. Shikamaru and Tsunade. I wonder what order they're in. Well, I'll tell you, because coming up at number 2, we have Shikamaru Nara, the 8th Hokage, the undoubtedly weakest Hokage to ever assume the mantle. A man who, by assuming the role of Hokage, flies in the face of the concept the strongest person in the village should be Hokage. Because at the time of his appointment as the 8th Hokage, Sakura was still very much in the village, and still is to this day. In fact, fact, at the time of Naruto's disappearance, Sasuke was still in the village. And yet, we got Shikamaru. But surely, they got some reasons. And their reasons are, and I quote, "Since the disappearance of Naruto and Hinata and Boruto, Shikamaru has been steering the ship that is Konoha. Ever since the franchise began, Shikamaru has seemed as if he was born to be the Hokage. And now, as the 8th Hokage, the shadow-manipulating ninja has been putting his money where his mouth is. During Naruto's tenure as the 7th, his right-hand man was offering Uzumaki more than a bit of expertise on the best routes to take in leading the Hidden Leaf. As we've seen so far in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, so far, Shikamaru has been putting in serious work to make sure everything is running smoothly in the face of world-ending threats, and in all honesty, he might prove to be the greatest Hokage of them all, should he be given the chance." So Shikamaru is number 2 on the list because of what he did before he was Hokage, and also what he might do. Good, you know, good. That makes perfect sense. Now listen, I am not trying to take anything from Shikamaru. The article does make a good-ish point here, that prior to becoming the 8th Hokage, he was steering a lot of the decisions that Naruto made as the 7th Hokage. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Shikamaru in his light novel was the person responsible for bringing all of the governmental bodies on the entire Naruto continent together to throw Naruto in front of them to ease the tensions to stop the 5th Great Shinobi World War from happening. But if we're going to use the things that these people were doing before they were Hokage as a metric to say how good they were as Hokage, then Naruto hasn't only saved the world thrice, he's saved the world 5 times. He defeated Kaguya. He defeated Toneri. You didn't see us mentioning the fact that Tobirama killed Izuna, or that Kakashi was instrumental in the battle against Kaguya. We're talking about them as Hokage, and as Hokage, Shikamaru has only been Hokage for 3 years. 3 years that, mind you, we know nothing about. But 3 years that, mind you, Shikamaru was under the effects of omnipotence. And while Shikamaru was able to break out of omnipotence by himself and help Boruto a little bit, effectively all that Shikamaru has done as Hokage is A, break himself out of omnipotence, and B, break Boruto out of prison. Something he had to have Mitsuki do because he doesn't have the power, apparently, as the Hokage, to free Boruto in the first place. Not to mention he doesn't have the power as the Hokage to do any fighting whatsoever. And that Shikamaru light novel we were talking about earlier, Shikamaru literally tries to use Shadow Strangle on a tree. And he's not only not able to destroy this tree, he's barely able to distress it. Shikamaru, by the time that he's Hokage, is barely tree level. Sure, he's a great politician and a great bureaucrat, but he can't do the save the worldy aspects of being the Hokage. He's a genius, but he's also kind of just a puppet for Kashin Koji right now. Why did he send Team 7 to the Land of Wind? Oh, I don't know, because Kashin Koji told him to? Shikamaru technically has no idea what's going on right now. However, he's blindly leaning on his alliances with Ada and Kashin Koji to guide him towards what he believes is the best possible future. But very little of the future being guided into a place of peace and prosperity has anything to do with Shikamaru. It has to do with Kashin Koji, Ada, Boruto, Kawaki, Sarada, and Mitsuki. And while Shikamaru as the Hokage has the ability to direct where Sarada and Mitsuki go, that's pretty much where his authority ends. So no, Shikamaru is not the second greatest Hokage of all time. He's probably the worst Hokage of all time. Not because he's bad at what he's doing, just because he doesn't really do anything, and what he does doesn't matter. He has never saved the world, and he probably never will. But if Shikamaru's at 2, that must mean that Tsunade's at 1, and yep, Tsunade Senju, the greatest Hokage of all time, was Hokage technically 4 years, during which Konoha got destroyed. Like really badly. But I have a tattoo of Tsunade, so let's see what they have to say. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. The 5th Hokage stands above the rest when it comes to how she handled her role along with the challenges that she tackled throughout the Shonen series. I don't get why they keep calling it the Shonen series. Just say the series or Naruto. I don't know why I have to specify the genre. First arriving as a gambling addict who had little interest in running the Hidden Leaf, Tsunade would come to be the perfect choice to take the spot as the 5th leader of Konoha. She led the ninjas through the 4th Ninja World War and fought against the Akatsuki, keeping the village together when other Hokages on the list might not have done the same. What Hokage on this list wouldn't have done exactly that? There's also really something to be said about the fact that the 5th handled the day-to-day operations of the Hokage so well, as if it's something fans were able to see on the regular. Tsunade had some serious character progression throughout the Shonen series and easily earns her place on top of the charts. What do we mean by the day-to-day operations of the Hokage? Like, paperwork? She hated doing paperwork. She always had stacks of paperwork on her desk, like every Hokage ever. Yeah, Tsunade is the Hokage for the majority of Naruto's run, and thus pretty much anything that happens during Naruto flows through Tsunade. Whether it be the assignment of Shikamaru and a Genin squad to chase down Sasuke, trying to get Naruto back from Mount Mubuko to battle against Pain, Konoha's joining of the Shinobi Alliance, or the sending of Jiraiya to the Hidden Rain to spy on the leader of the Akatsuki to try and get more information for Konoha's battle against them. Tsunade as a Hokage is severely overhated. Sending Jiraiya to the Hidden Rain by himself is often brought up as a blunder of Tsunade's in terms of Hokage-ship, but it was undoubtedly the right choice. Jiraiya was by far and away the strongest asset that Konoha had at that moment in time, and even just popping up in the Hidden Rain by himself was enough to get him immediately noticed by not only Nagato but also Konan. Nobody else at that current moment in time stood a chance against any of the paths of pain, and thus anybody else either would have gotten in Jiraiya's way as he wasn't used to fighting with other people, or would have just died alongside him. However, we are not gonna sit here and say that Tsunade is the greatest Hokage of all time. While she does fight valiantly in the battle against Nagato, trying to keep as many people alive as possible in Konoha, ultimately, everybody in Konoha dies. And while it's not really her fault, and that's more Danzo's fault because she wanted to bring back Naruto from Mount Mubuko to battle against Nagato, something that was blocked by the elders in Danzo, it still happens on her watch. And while she is responsible for bringing all the other Kage back to life after their battle against Madara, a lot of the other Kage on this list would have posed a much bigger threat against Madara than Tsunade did in that fight, leading to a possibility where all of the Kage don't end up dead. But yes, as Hokage, she is instrumental in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. By combining her powers with not only Sakura, but also Lady Katsuyu, she was able to ensure that a vast majority of injured shinobi did not end up dead. And thus the death toll of 20,000 from the Shinobi Alliance in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War could have been substantially higher without her. But 50% of the healing, and therefore 50% of the credit for keeping people alive during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, should also go to Sakura. And while Tsunade was the person who trained Sakura, and therefore she gets a little bit of credit for Sakura being such an incredible medical ninja, Tsunade just simply doesn't have the resume to hang with a lot of the Hokage on this list. And thus, while I think she is far from the worst Hokage of all time, she is middle of the pack at best. So what's the actual list of Hokages from best to worst? Well, I believe from the bottom to the top, we go Danzo 9 at our dishonorable mentions spot, Shikamaru 8, Minato 7, Kakashi at 6, Tsunade at 5, Hiruzen at 4, Hashirama at 3, Naruto at 2, and Tobirama at 1. Though, legitimately, if you wanted to swap Naruto and Tobirama, I could not hold that against you. Naruto accomplishes more in terms of saving the world, Tobirama accomplishes more in living through with Konoha's founding beliefs. This list is not an opinion. It is fact. And until Shikamaru accomplishes literally anything as Hokage, he is the worst Hokage of all time. Very far away from the number 2 spot. But I guess I'm curious to hear from you guys. Who do you believe is the best Hokage of all time, and who's the worst? Let me know in the comments below. And while I got you down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go seethe with anger somewhere else.